It's 5:05 and the special meeting of the WSESD will come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and the agenda. If a member of the public is having difficulty connecting, please let us know via email or text message. Regardless, the meeting will continue as scheduled. I would like to confirm the agenda and just make a couple of comments regarding it. The next board meeting is on January 28th. And it will be on the agenda, and it is certainly on Frank Rucker's schedule as a public information meeting. As well, we anticipate budget approval by the board, budget approval for FY26. With that in mind, the meeting is next Tuesday. Any critical issues for board consideration, please send to me by tomorrow, 12 noon. I know it's very short notice. Reminder, the goal for the next board meeting on the 28th is to keep the agenda focused on budgetary issues. All board issues will follow the public information meeting and also follow election article approval by the board. So please send me your wish list as soon as possible. The other point, before we get into tonight's agenda, with board approval, the original summit date of Tuesday, February 11 will move to Wednesday, February 12 with board approval. So if there is a problem with moving it by one day, please indicate this evening. I need to confirm that with Mark tonight. And that means that we will then have the ability to hold to our regular meeting as an SD on Tuesday the 11th at 6 p.m. And the summit will be on Wednesday the 12th at 5 p.m. And the summit will be in lieu of the regularly scheduled SU meeting. So if that works for everyone, and I don't see any negatives at this point, it's a go. I will confirm that with Mark later this evening. All right, and that enables us to not get too backlogged with the work that we need to do as an SD board. And the final, yes,
I
Sean.
just have one question about something you mentioned. The next, on the 28th, you said something about election?
It's about the article approval by the board. I do believe we have to vote on that.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
But it doesn't have anything to do with an election.
Not at all.
per se.
It is listed as election article approval, and that's the only reason I said it like that, the terminology, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, you're absolutely welcome. As you look at tonight's agenda, there are two executive sessions. The first one has everything to do with the vacancy, and there will be action taken, anticipated action on the first executive session, and the second one, there will be no action. And so, if there is no comment from the board, we're gonna move on to public comment on non-agenda items. This is a time for the board to listen and to take notes. It is not a time for the board to respond to comments or to engage in dialogue with the public. If appropriate, the board and administration will work on next steps. So this is time for public comment on non-agenda items. I'll give it a minute before moving on.
Is there anybody on Zoom?
Yes,
Yes.
there are people on Zoom, yes. Okay, I don't see any hands up, so I'm gonna move along with tonight's agenda. I wanna thank everyone for coming together on this frigid evening. I've scripted my remarks this evening to make sure that I don't repeat myself and I stay on point. As you can see from the agenda, we will have 2 executive sessions, and the first one will enable the board to consider each of 3 candidates for the vacant position for school board director from the town of Dummerston. The board thanks the 3 candidates for expressing interest in this interim position: Jody Normandeau, Jessica Everlith, and Gretchen Letterman. This evening is organized as follows, and we're going to determine the order of speaker right now. We're drawing from the hat.
It's from Deborah's hood. So everybody's little green square. And 3.
You're so organized.
And so I'm going to mark this
Alright,
down.
so first will be Jessica. Second will be Gretchen. And that means Jody is third.
Okay, all right, so as you can see, the order was randomly selected. Yes. Following each candidate's remarks, 3 to 5 minutes maximum, there will be time set aside for question and answer. And we will repeat this process with every candidate. So I'm assuming question and answer after each candidate, based upon what is said. The board then will retire to an executive session in order to consider each of the candidates, and returning to public session, the board will announce its recommendation, followed by a public vote. Although we have followed this process in the recent past, does any board member have concerns or suggestions before we begin? Okay. So, we are going to begin with, actually before we begin, I'm sorry, I left one thing out. Let's just do introductions around the room. Okay, that makes sense. Sorry to have left that out. I'll start. Deborah Stanford, chair of this board.
I'm Ann Beekman, representative for Putney and chair of the SU board.
Kim Price, vice chair of this board.
Sean Murphy from Guilford on the SD board.
Brian Reamer from Guilford.
Okay, and then online, we have Tim Maciel, who is on this board from Brattleboro. Colleen Savage, also from Brattleboro, and Matt Shipley, also from Brattleboro. So I presume everyone online can hear, is that correct? Okay, got it, we got a thumbs up on that one. Yes, Kim?
Just one thought, when we get to the questions time, if we can rotate who starts and answers the question first. So that way, where Jessica's not answering all the questions first each time, and then that way.
Okay, so would you, so what I had thought was that as, let's say Jessica begins, we have question answer, then Gretchen, question
Okay.
answer, then Jody question answer?
Okay.
Or should we do all three and then do question answer?
I think all three.
Okay, I think we all have our
We
druthers on this one.
we'll do it how you set it up.
Okay. Okay, so, we'll do one at a time, I think. Okay, great. All right. So, we're gonna begin with Jessica.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Jessica Everlith. I was laughing that you were pulling names from a hat because when I was running for the RTM when I lived in Connecticut, I tied with the person who was running against me. So we had a recount and we were still tied. And so they were gonna pull a name out of a hat, but she decided to step out of the race at that point. So much of democracy can be handled by just pulling your name out of a hat. When I saw the opening for the school board, I was interested because I'm a very civically minded person. I volunteer at Dummerston School and occasionally at the Village Closet in Brattleboro. I also do some other volunteer work with various organizations, and so this has kind of been like the next natural step for me to get even more involved in something that I have a personal connection to. I have one child at Dummerston School and one child that will be enrolling in Dummerston School for pre-K in the fall. And so I have a personal investment in it, and I also have a background in both civic engagement with my time on the RTM in Branford, Connecticut, and with working with nonprofit organizations of all different missions throughout my about a decade of my career. So marrying all that together, this feels like the next natural thing for me to be involved with, and I'm really excited to kind of help everyone in the school district kind of work together to solve what I see to be kind of this crunch of financial woes and worries, and it's not just in the school district. I work in healthcare, and Vermont is in a really interesting spot right now where we have a lot of really great social services and they're all really feeling the crunch, schools included. And so I think I have the history and background to be able to support this process moving forward and figuring out creative solutions that will help not only foster an inclusive and belonging environment in our schools here, but also help students and teachers and families thrive within the district.
Thank you. Questions? Comments? Yes.
Brian Reamer from Guilford. You mentioned in your statement that, your written statement, that you have, you've used communication in your role with, particularly with nonprofits. So could you share an example of how you have used communication, your communication skills, in an emotionally charged situation?
Sure. Are you speaking about like a confrontational emotional situation type of like navigating tough conversations is what you're asking?
I won't define it.
Okay. Thank you. Sure. So I think when I approach communication, especially if it's a difficult conversation or an emotional conversation, I like to validate that there are emotions there and that there are big feelings there, and that we can come to an agreement with big feelings. We can figure out where we find common ground, where we can find a place to move forward. And really, with communications, a lot of it is based on relationship building and having a good rapport with people and getting to know people and what they're interested in, so that when you do have tough conversations, you have that relationship foundation to kind of lean into, and that supports the progress.
Anyone online? Okay. Kim?
Yeah,
Tim, yes.
Jessica, first of all, thank you for applying. So the board tries its best to make data-driven decisions. Can you give examples of how you've been on a board that has delved into empirical data
Sure. So I use empirical data a lot. I don't know where to look for my work. So I do a lot of fundraising, and a lot of that you have to use data to support strategy. You can't just go out and spend all of your money trying to fundraise, because then you don't fundraise enough. So I've used a lot of data in that way with, we use Salesforce to manage donor relationships where I work, but kind of relying on that, a mixture of that and experience to kind of make a decision moving forward.
Thank you. Kim?
Hi, Kim Price from Brattleboro. And there are a lot of responsibilities from the school for the school board, but what do you think the most important responsibility is as a school board member? Would be as a school board member?
Sure. I think the most important responsibility is that we are creating an environment where students and teachers can really thrive, and that really comes from a place of, I think, safety and well-being. So creating policies and a budget that supports those policies that kind of build off of the value of safety and well-being for the population.
Anyone else?
Just one more, if I may.
Yes, Tim.
Jessica, have you attended by Zoom or in person any school board meetings in the last year or so? And if so, what are your thoughts on how the board conducts itself?
I have not attended live. I've watched a couple of the videos and I've read most of the minutes. I haven't read all of the committee minutes, but I have read most of all of the full board meeting minutes. And I think as far as the way that the board conducts themselves, I think for the most part it seems pretty standard for the way that boards I've been involved with, the nonprofit boards mostly, are run, and that type of thing. I think if I would have watched more videos, I could probably speak more to the conduct. It's hard to kind of read about conduct in the minutes, so I have the basic knowledge of what has gone on, but not the nuance that you get from being in the room or seeing the videos.
Thank you, Jessica.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, Brian.
Yeah, that's Brian Reamer again. I'm wondering, you mentioned that you have kids in school, so what have you seen about schools, our schools, that you think is really something that's working well, and what's something you think that is worth improving?
Sure. So I have one child in school and one coming into the school, and I think what's going well, I can only speak to Dummerston School. I don't have a lot of involvement with the other schools other than some friends who work there. But I think what's going well with Dummerston School is for the most part, they're pretty good about communication. And so we know what's going on at the school most of the time. The teachers are pretty good at getting back to us when we have questions and that type of thing. There have been a couple issues. I don't want to call it bullying because they're 5-year-olds, so it's more like some issues with kids that have been handled well by the principal and by the social worker and folks who are involved. So I think they do, when conflict arises, at least in my personal experience, it's gone well.
Great.
Just one more quick one, if I may.
Yes, Tim.
Jessica, if you were chosen for this seat, are there any particular committees that you would be interested in joining?
I'd have to give that some more thought. I am interested in the policy committee, top of mind, but I'd have to look and think through that a little more.
Okay. All right. We can. We'll have time for another round of questions after we hear from everyone. Okay. So thank you very much, Jessica. Gretchen. Hi.
Hi. All right. So, this is all brand new to me. Consider myself a new parent, 4.5 years into this. We're all learning as we move along. My reason, I guess my intent, which you see in my statement, is because as I've been in this school system for the last few months, again, we're in preschool, so this is brand new. I've learned that just from talking with the parents that people want to know more about what's going on and they want to come to the meetings or they want to be on Zoom, but it's usually smack in the middle of dinner and close to bedtime when it ends. So, you know, you can have Zoom on while you're cooking. I think at our last Dummerston Leadership Committee, when I found out about this, I was in the middle of cooking and my daughter was on Zoom with us. So, yeah, I think what I'm finding is people were, at least within Dummerston School, were looking for someone to step up, and I felt that I would be a good person to fill this role, I guess. I felt like I was going to be a fresh voice of Jessica, and I was going to, and I'm going to bring hope. I want to word this the right way. A collective voice from the parents, so not just like an actual representative of the parents, not just being I don't have an agenda besides that, if that helps. So I'm here to be a representative for the parents, and I think being here, putting the time in, and being able to gather that information and bring it back to the board from the Dummerston School is the best way that I can serve the community with the lack of experience that I have in this. My experience for the last 45 years, I started in Rhode Island, grew up there, and moved all around. The last 15 years or so, I was in Rhode Island, moved up here 2 years ago with my family, and we moved to Dummerston for the school system. And it was between that and Putney. So we were looking at this specific school district for a reason. And my husband's originally from Saxton's River, and his mother works up in Saxton's River as well and lives there. So that's the other kind of draw for us, was to get closer contact with family. So my career history, I guess, is my summarized CV is that I do event management for nonprofits. When the pandemic hit, I also had a child at the same exact time, and between pandemic and moving to Vermont and having a child, I don't do it as much anymore. So I have usually one client every year, maybe 2 if I'm lucky. I used to have about 10. So things are different for me now, being a parent, being available to the community more. Working with nonprofits, I've always not been able to serve on the board or committees because it's a bit of a conflict for me to work with one organization and then get paid by another organization. So I do lots of fundraising. I work with boards to bring their fundraising goals up for the event, which is usually some organizations, that's their singular fundraising effort for the year. Sometimes I'm working with the full organization, sometimes I'm just working with the board, sometimes it's a volunteer organization. So I'm familiar with those pieces of sitting on a board and being a part of a board meeting. I took minutes at the beginning of my career as an executive assistant, so I sat through and had to look up Robert's rule on many occasions. But yeah, I mean, I really don't have too much to add, except for my intent to be here is to be a collective voice and to facilitate that voice to the board as a parent.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So now I open it up to the board for questions. Brian?
Thank you. Gretchen, you said in your statement that you have an innate understanding of rules and policies. So can you talk more about that? I'm not sure what you mean. If you could give some examples of that and how that actually plays out in a situation that
Yeah.
you've been useful in or made some difference in.
Yeah. So for me, when I'm doing event management, it seems like I'm an event planner, but much of it is managing committees, the event committee, and then the board in the larger sense. When it comes to the event and the conduct at the events, the fundraising process, and I see a lot of where things are lacking with boards and with nonprofits in general, and a lot of it has to do with capacity. So when it comes to the roles and policies, it's my job to keep things moving in a meeting, to facilitate the meeting. It's my job to keep an event moving from beginning to end so that everybody has all of the information and the marketing materials that we're trying to get out to the organization, to the stakeholders and the constituents, is that all of that information is getting served. So as I'm kind of going through roles and what people are supposed to be doing, I'm often talking to the executive director in a different capacity as a consultant saying, oh, you can't say that. So there's times that I'm shaping and shifting the roles within a nonprofit just specifically for the event because there's a lot of PR involved as well. The kind of innate understanding of policies for me is that I've done a lot of human resource policy writing. That was just a job that somebody said, oh, you're gonna be great at this. And I took on this huge project and did that. And then I also create policies as well for nonprofits that don't, a lot of times I come into an organization and they don't have a specific, any specific policies around development and fundraising. And so even though I'm coming in as an event person, I'm seeing all of these holes and gaps and where we need to fix things. And often the next year that I work on an event, we've now hired somebody to fill those pieces. So really the innate side of the reason I use the word innate is because it just it is innate inside in my head. It makes total sense to me. Everything has to function with policy. My house functions with policy. You know, coming into parenthood in a policy-driven mindset has thrown me for a loop. My child has zero policy.
They all do.
Yeah. So I think it's more, when I say innate, I think it's more that it's just how my brain is organized and functions. It's not, and I say innate because it's not experienced. It's not a learned process, if that helps.
Yeah, I can appreciate what you're saying in terms of managing individuals of all ages at all times, yes, and through that tense pre-dinner time moment as well.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, because the whole issue of when meetings take place is
Yes.
difficult.
Yeah.
And we also have to manage it in terms of the administrators who sit in here, and generally that whole side of the room is packed with administrators,
Right.
board members. I'm wondering, in the midst of the busyness of your life, have you had a chance to observe board meetings?
So the first board meeting that I attended on Zoom was the one about the I think it was a special meeting, perhaps, or a budget meeting, and that was around the food service, and that was a really enjoyable one to watch. And I had it was funny because I actually had that on Zoom at the same time as another meeting in my ear, because it was also the select board night for the library that was in process, if everyone remembers that. And then my daughter was coming in and listening to everything with me. So it gets a little hectic. But I had a chance to kind of see how that was conducted. I mean, that was a great meeting. What I hear about the board, I hear it from all sorts of different people about how it's working and how it's functioning, and I can't really make heads or tails of of how everything is, I guess, you know, we can read the minutes and like you're saying, you can't really see how it feels to be in the room. But no, I haven't had a chance to be in any regular board meetings. I got involved with that one through the farm to school, and then I ended up on the ad hoc committee a little bit, just trying to make sure that did go through and see where I could support that, because it seemed to be an important process for us. But yeah, no, I don't have any other experience with the board.
Okay, thank you.
Hoping to gain that, yeah.
Other questions from board members? Kim?
Hi, Kim Franks. What do you see, oh, I just lost my question, I apologize. What are the current challenges facing education?
As a
That you
whole,
see-
or
or
that
just
I
what
see
you
in school?
see.
Yeah, so
You know,
again,
you're-
this is.
And don't expect a long list, because
Yeah,
that
yeah.
would be here all night.
The current challenges.
Yes.
I mean, it's such a hard one to answer because I've been in the system for like 4 months. And we have 2 amazing teachers that have actually made my life easier and made me feel more accepted as a parent, compared to this, you know, the preschool we were at before this. So I don't know what the challenges are. I really see that with any nonprofit, any organization, it's the money. Everything is trying to figure out how to, you know, rob Peter to pay Paul and try to figure out how we're gonna do all of this. And those are the pieces that I appreciate the most in any organization. In education, it's how do you say what's more important and where to put the funding? And you can only do that by sitting in the meetings and being a part of it, and that's what makes me want to be a voice for all the parents and to be here, is to be able to help people understand why something isn't functioning the way it needs to, and it always comes back to the funding. I mean, that's the biggest challenge, and where do you find that, and where do you cut, and that goes all the way up to, you know, the national budget. And it happens in our households, and it's, you know, it's the biggest challenge across everything, or else we'd all be sitting here just smiling at all the work that we've gotten done to, you know, to feed our kids and to feed the world, and nobody's unhoused, and yeah, so I feel like that's the biggest challenge. Where do you put the money, and what's the most important thing? And everybody has different feelings about that, and facilitating that in a productive way.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Gretchen.
Tim Maciel.
Myself from Brattleboro. So a constant theme is achieving equity in funding and academic support services. That's a constant challenge. Could you speak specifically about the equity issues that you may see in our district?
Well, coming from Rhode Island, it's leaps and bounds over here. I mean, the nonprofit I'm working with right now is a nonprofit that works with West African immigrants and the elders of those communities, and so the equity just isn't there. So I think for me, when I'm here, I haven't been in the community long enough to see all of that. But and where we are, I mean, I don't know, it's a tough question, because I haven't been outside of my house and school and the grocery store enough to be able to understand that within this community, and that's, again, another reason I want to be here. And I feel like Vermont does have policies and does do a much better job than anywhere else I've lived so far, to have inclusive policies. It's a never-ending battle, I feel like no matter where you are or what you do, again, it's a never-ending battle, but equity is near and dear to my heart, just from working with nonprofits for so long.
Thank you very much, Gretchen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, if there are no further questions from board members for Gretchen at this time, we're going to move on to Jody Normandeau.
Hi, Jody Normandeau, and you have my letter that I sent, so I try not to repeat most of that stuff. I moved to Dummerston in 1970, and I had a son who was going to enter first grade and another son that was 2 years behind. And the state of Vermont had just started, or just finished, their design for education at that point. And I remember that Dummerston was supposed to make their own design for education using what the state did. And I thought, well, that was a good place to get started for me to get involved in the school, because I fully intended to stay involved in the school. So I was on that, and it was a great procedure. I tried to find the Dummerston one. I can't find the Dummerston one, only the state one. But anyway, you know, after being on the board and all the activities that I did as a parent, I had 2 sons go through Dummerston, and now I've had 2 granddaughters graduate from Dummerston and are in college. And I was on the board for, I think, 2 3-year terms when my sons were in school, and I was on the board later on with the granddaughters for a year or 2, and then when Act 46 came in to make us a conglomerate, I was on that committee also to get us from one stage to another, and I chose not to run for the board at that point. I always had kids in my car, mainly 5 boys in my car. Times were very different back then. No seatbelts, and parents could drive, and you didn't have to get your fingerprints done and all that. And we drove to New York City, we drove to the Cape, we drove to Boston to the museum, we drove to museums in Bennington. I mean, we drove everywhere at that point, and it was no problem at all. And it was great fun having these kids in the car all the time. I've always loved kids. I knew when I went to school that I wanted to either work with animals or kids. I guess that's what I ended up doing, working for kids. One time I thought of taking my year course and going into education, but I never did that. I was a social major. What do you do with a social major? You know, social work, yes, but social, no. So I ended up working with my husband all these years. And I have been very involved in the Dummerston community in many instances too. So I don't think I need to go into all the things that I've done in my time. If you want to ask me about them, you can, but I don't think I need to go into them. So if you want to ask me questions, go ahead.
Well,
Tim.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Tim.
yeah, Jody, again, I want to thank you for applying, and I want to thank you for all the service over the years. You've been one of the most active public members that the board has had over the years, and we really appreciate it. What are your thoughts on how to get more members of the public involved in board business?
Oh, that's good, Tim. I wanted to thank both Jess and Gretchen for stepping up, because often when you're young, you don't have the opportunity to step up and do these things, as Gretchen just pointed out, and she's doing it for other parents who can't. Forgot your question already. How do we get people involved? I think the Zoom has helped a lot, so people can watch at least the meetings, and BCTV has helped because you can go back and watch the movies, the videos of it. As to coming out to board meetings, I do agree that the different times you can have the meetings are difficult for young people to do. But there's no time for a young person with families that would be good until they get into school full time, and then maybe you want to do it during that time. I mean, I raised two 2 boys and I had 2 girls, grandgirls with me often a lot of time, and they keep you pretty busy. One of my persons that I know used to say, if I knew being a grandparent was so great, I would have wouldn't have had kids. I would have gone straight to the grandkids because you can send them back.
Yes.
But I've always loved kids, and I did take a couple of courses in education in college, but I'm not an educator. I'm a kid person. Does that answer your question, Tim?
Yeah, pretty well. Thank you, Jody.
So I have a bit of a pause in asking a question because, again, to Tim's point, your active involvement as a community member in board business. My question is, and piggybacking off a question that someone on the board asked already, what do you see as the hurdles that we're facing at this point, the challenges?
You don't want to get me started, Deborah. I see our hurdles as being the governor, the legislature, the AOE, the State Board of Education, the School Boards Association. I see all of those as being difficult because they keep putting things on the schools that need to be paid for in other ways than the education fund. And they keep putting things on teachers, which makes the teachers have so much to do that they can't really do what they would like to do with the students. I think our system is very difficult. I am very strongly in favor of small schools. Right now, they're talking about closing more schools and more consolidation. And they're talking about schools under 200. Well, Guilford's under 200, Dummerston's under 200, Putney may be right there in the line, and Brattleboro may have some that are under 200. Oak Grove? Yeah. And I also do work with a huge group of people throughout the state who started at the Act 46 level, but now are getting involved in this, trying to keep our small community family schools. And I hope that the board would get involved in this, because I think what's coming down, and one of the things that was said in one of the letters or whatever, is they called it Walmart schools. I call them factory schools. I don't think any of us want a factory or a Walmart school. I think what we've got is what we want. And I'm hoping that the young people who come in now will want to continue, and they move here because of the school, whoever it is, they move here. And we've got teachers in Dummerston who moved here because of Dummerston. We've got all kinds of families who moved here, and I know Guilford and Putney, they're all the same way. So, does that answer your question, Deborah?
It certainly does, thank you very much. Yes, Brian.
Yeah, Brian Reamer. So Jody, that's your review of the big picture statewide. If you zero in on this school district, and I know you often raise questions about the budget, but setting that aside, what are the other important issues that you think the board should be paying attention to here?
Other than the budget?
Yeah.
I think the board should be paying attention to getting the best people, no matter what the position is, and not be in a hurry to fill a slot, which I have found that seems to be happening, because we have less and less people going into the teaching profession. We have less and less people being a superintendent or a finance manager. I think you need to spend more time researching. I think also, and I know it's happened over the last couple of years, when you've done advertisements, you've widened the scale of where you send advertisements for. And especially with equity and inclusion, it's those kinds of things. You need to get out of the regular old way of where we advertise. And I think the board has done that to a certain extent. I'm not sure how much they have. but we need to have the best people we possibly can have in this school teaching our kids. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they've been to a teacher's college. Sometimes I think somebody could be a great teacher who's just majored in math or majored in English, and I think they could be used somehow.
Thank you, Jody. Matt Shibley, online.
Hey, sorry to break protocol here a little bit, but I have a question for each of the candidates, just a simple yes or no. Because one of the things that an appointment to this board would give you guys is potentially the incumbent seat for the upcoming election. So I would love to hear from each of the candidates, just a simple yes or no. Do you plan on running in the election?
Yes.
I can see her. Yes.
No,
Okay, I think we just got 2 yeses and 1 no. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
Well, as long as Matt has jumped in with a triple question for everybody. Thank
Sean
you very
Murphy.
much,
Sean
by the
Murphy.
way. It's been really good to hear from everybody and very educational, so that's nice. As you all know, we are a unified district, so it's Putney, Dummerston, Guilford, and Brattleboro. 2,200 students. You know, the budget is $67 million, 435 staff. So I know that when you live in a town, you become sort of centric to the town and the town school. But how do any one of you feel about being part of a large education system and having as much say for the students in Putney or Guilford or Brattleboro as you do in Dummerston? So whatever, anybody.
This is something I actually have thought about as well because I am central to Dummerston. Everything I do right now is there. But for me, I keep thinking, like, what's appropriate for a board member? Can we go sit in on classes? Can I go talk with an administrator? Like, what are we allowed to do and what are we not allowed to do? And I look forward to learning more about that so that I can get to know each school. But I also think that if I'm coming with a voice from Dummerston, and whatever we might be dealing with at that time, if I'm putting the same effort into all the other schools as I am with Dummerston, then I should be good to go. So I feel like that's the part that it's exciting to know that that I was having a conversation in Dummerston about the food service, and that all of a sudden I realized, oh, this is district-wide. When this decision was made, 2,200 kids get to eat better food in starting, next year. So I love the groupthink. I love the fact that it's not just Dummerston School. There's a whole family behind this, there's a whole community behind it. So I appreciate the larger side of it, and the fact that we're not just coming up with policies that are only affecting a small group of kids, and when you can think of it in a larger picture, you can get more information and more diversity and more more diversity. I feel like that, and diversity in thinking, diversity in culture, diversity in everything is what's going to give us the knowledge and information that we need to support. And I always, as a parent, you kind of have this like tunnel vision. Then you get to school and you realize, and you start talking to other parents and you realize, geez, all of these people are dealing with this. Everybody's managing this process. And again, I haven't had a single bad day in Dummerston because we have everybody's amazing there. So it's a little bit different for me. But I'm curious, I have seen people jump to another, or talk to a couple of parents that were in Dummerston and jump to another school for whatever reason. And so I am curious to learn more about what makes people fit where and what we can do as a larger community. I love the district side of all this. So that's the part that I've been jazzed about. Minnie? That's really nice.
Well, I think you know very well where I'm coming from. I'm coming from Dummerston, a small town, a small school, an excellent small school, a family school, a school where you could understand, you go to town meeting, and you can understand a budget. I find in this district, and I think that's one of the questions that maybe Tim asked, or I can't remember, that the budget is almost $68 million. It's over 200 pages. It's impossible unless you are Sean, who has been doing the budget for 28 years. It's impossible for the ordinary person to delve into that budget.
Mm-hmm.
And as much explanation as Frank gives us and Sean gives us, it's quite a thing compared to just having, I'll say Christina, because when she was chair of the Dummerston board, standing up there, and she can explain that horrible piece of paper that has the CLA and everything on it better than anybody I've ever seen before. Explain that. But most of us don't understand it. So if you give me my choice, and that's one of the reasons that we moved to Dummerston, is for a small, family-oriented, personal school. You take those schools away from Dummerston and Guilford, and you've lost your community. Nobody's going to move into those towns anymore because there's no school there. That's my philosophy, and you knew that anyway.
So I think for me, where I grew up near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, everything was kind of regionalized. So having lived in New England for the last 13, 14 years, where everything is not quite regionalized, everyone has their own little pocket, and there's a tiny school in Dummerston that on the third day of pre-K, the principal already knew my child's name. That was kind of a culture shock for me coming here. So I think I understand the larger structure things a little better. I mean, the community, I love the small schools, and the community like that is what drew us to this area, is to have that supportive community. And I think with the regional structure of the larger district, we have a real opportunity to kind of figure out where the inequities lie and pool those resources so that things are a little more equal for all of the people in our community. And so I think from my perspective, everyone that I've talked to in this area is so community minded. They're willing to roll up their sleeves and help their neighbor, and that is unlike anywhere I've ever lived before. And so I think, we have a real opportunity to make it better for everyone here. The way things
Thank
are.
you. Thank you. I'm looking at the screen, I'm looking around the room, and if there are no further questions, I think it's just about 6 o'clock, and I would like the board to go into executive session to continue this conversation behind closed doors. So I invite you.
May I ask one more question?
Yes, Tim.
I realize it's getting late, but the high school has not been mentioned. One of the 4 goals that the district has is to improve the graduation rate, at least up to the average level of the state. I wonder if the candidates have any thoughts on the high school and how that goal might be reached, given that it's an operational issue, how that goal is reached. But I wonder if you have any thoughts on what the board can do to see that our graduation rate is at least that of the state average.
I'll start, Tim. Our graduation rate is not as good as the state average. I didn't realize that, but you're telling me that, right?
That's right.
Oh my goodness. I think that's a very difficult thing to do because kids are so different, and particularly when they get to be teenagers, they're very, very different creatures. I think perhaps having more, that's gonna cost a lot more money though. Different, more interesting, more courses that some of these kids who are not interested in going to college or even into the career center, because I think the career center is wonderful, and today, don't we need plumbers, electricians, and carpenters? I'm surprised that, more and more kids aren't taking advantage of those courses. Maybe somebody's interested in, I'll throw photography out there. I mean, I'm sure there's some art courses that include that, but photography or art or how to wire a electric bicycle or, some things to keep some of these students who really have no interest and all they want to do is get out of here and I don't know what they think they're going to do when they get out of here without anything, but I don't know. High school, I mean, I'm like the 5th generation who graduated from Brattleboro. No, my kids, grandkids are about the 5th generation to graduate from Brattleboro High School. It doesn't seem to have changed a whole lot since then, but that's a hard question, Tim.
Yeah.
I think we need to think about it more.
Thank you, Jody.
Yeah, I don't have any answers to that. The only thing I can think of as I'm listening to Jody and hearing the information that you're sharing is that it's larger than the high school itself. It's the community, and I wouldn't even know where to begin with that except to have a very long conversation with a lot of people that understand the high school, understand its history. So I don't have an answer to how to do that, just that the issue goes beyond education, in my mind.
Yeah, it goes to parents.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I just heard Jody say, which is something I was gonna say, is I think parents are a big piece of it, and I think, obviously it's tough to reach parents because they're busy and a lot of parents are working, both parents are working full-time, if not multiple jobs, to try to make ends meet. So I think figuring out a way to support the parents, but also I would need to understand a little more the why behind it. And I do think it can be so individualized for students. And one thing that kind of comes to mind is, the experience I have is with the pre-K and kindergarten, the early education program here in Dummerston. And the folks that I talk to that are not from this area, where I say my child spends most of the day outside, is like, that blows their mind. So it's like an appropriate education for the age and for the social emotional development. So I think figuring out a way to kind of find a way to alternatively educate for students who need it. I don't know what's happening with that already, but that's kind of where I would start without having any data to back it up at this point. But
And thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I am going to, at this point, invite the board to go into our glass booth and invite you to stay. And
Is that soundproof?
Not really, no.
We'll put on some music.
it's chat amongst yourselves.
Okay,
Right?
sure.
Okay, so is there a motion to hold that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or a person involved at a substantial disadvantage?
So moved.
Thank you, Kim. Second. We've got a second from Ann. Thank you. Any discussion? All right. So is there a motion to enter into executive session under 1 VSA 313A3? The appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee.
So moved.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Anne, for the second. All right, we are going into executive session. Oh, so sorry, did I miss the vote? I did, okay. We had a motion, we had a second. Any discussion? All right, oh, did we vote the first time around? No, we didn't. Okay, all right. Well, voting on moving into executive session. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we are moving into executive session. Thank you very much. So, really difficult conversation. And we were in executive session much longer than I had anticipated, that I had budgeted for in terms of timing. So we come out in this fashion. Is there a motion for the board to accept Jessica Everlith as the interim board director to fill the vacancy for the town of Dummerston?
I move.
So moved.
So moved from Kim Price. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Sean. And it's now open for discussion. So as the board chair, again, I want to say very difficult conversation. And the rationale for Jessica Everlith as the board's recommendation, whatever that rationale is, it's the same rationale that we could offer for any of the other two candidates. That's the issue. It has to do with community involvement. It has to do with love of children. It has to do with commitment to the educational system that your families have been or currently are fully invested in. It has to do with working with a variety of people and personalities as we further the safety and the well-being of our children, the education of our children. That's why we all sit here through these very long meetings. So that's my those are my comments. Does anyone else want to add anything?
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
So I
Still-
yes,
still not
wait,
officially
no,
on the ballot.
yes, I didn't forget that. I didn't forget that this time.
Is Deborah
Yes.
allowed to sign?
And wait 1 second. Yes.
And I just want to say, I would still love both of you to run, because I think that's important. And if there's other Dummerston citizens that want to run, I think the more that run, it's a great conversation that we're able to have.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are going to vote at this point, and this is going to be a roll call vote. Okay, we're going to do it that way. So I'm going to go in order. Ann Beekman.
Nay.
Tim Maceo.
Nay.
Sean Murphy.
Yes.
Kim Price.
Yes.
Brian Reamer.
Yes.
Colleen Savage.
Yes.
Matt Shibley.
Aye.
Deborah Stanford. Nay. So, and it's a very public vote. And this is, I just want to say this very clearly, even as we go through a roll call vote, this winds up being the will of the board with full acceptance. So thank you very, very much. Thank you to all three candidates. Thank you for your hard work and for your willingness to participate in this process. Now, I very formally, I want to say the WSESD welcomes Jessica Everlith as the school board director from the town of Dummerston. You will be in this position until the official election on March 4. In addition, you will retain this seat for the public school district annual meeting on March 18. So you're going to have to join us on that podium at this district town meeting, I guarantee you. In order for your term to begin, please call the central office immediately to meet with our district clerk, Mo Hart, so that you can be officially sworn in.
Okay.
So you're going to call the central office and you're going to speak to Mo Hart, okay, to be sworn in. And I'm going to recommend that Ann Beekman serve as your mentor, to be your go-to person for questions. And the other piece of this, Jessica, and this I experienced 3 years ago as a new board member at that time, is that all of the board members are here, we are all here to support each other, and there are no stupid questions ever, because invariably that question that we hesitate on, the person you're talking to says, oh, I don't know. I have to think about that. So we're all in this together, very much so. So we thank every candidate for your commitment to public service on behalf of students and on behalf of our staff. And we appreciate your comments, and we encourage all of you to stay committed as community members, engaged in our board meetings, and all of our committee meetings are open to the public as well. So get familiar with our website and ask questions about what we're doing, policy, finance, all of the above. Sean.
Yeah, this is probably obvious, but I think I'll say it anyway. In order to be on the ballot, you have to get your petitions in by Monday, the 27th.
Yeah.
So just
Thank you.
At 5 p.m.
Yeah.
At 5 p.m.
Yeah.
No later than 5 p.m. Okay, and that's to
And
Lori
I'd just like to add that even though you have a mentor, Jessica, feel free to reach out to any board member for any questions you may have.
So we feel that very strongly. Jody, yes.
Can you sign a Dummerston petition?
We're signing her, we all signed.
Oh, yes, I can. Oh, yes. So yes, of course. Yes, I can sign a Dummerston, as a Dummerston resident. Yes, okay, absolutely. So thank you very much. And I should do that before. Can I just take a moment?
Sign.
And can we, before we go, this is now 7 o'clock. Board members, we've been sitting here for 2 hours. I need to take a 10-minute stretch. Okay, we're gonna take a 10-minute break. That's to everyone online, and we're coming back at 7:10. Thank you. So, it is 7:09. I am bringing us back to order. Are we taping right now? Okay. Last issue on the agenda. Is there a motion to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or a person involved at a substantial disadvantage?
So moved.
Okay, Ann just moved it. I'm sorry, Kim just moved it. I know the difference.
I know you do.
Yes. And I need a second. Second by Ann. Discussion. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Is there a motion to enter into executive session under 1 VSA 313A3 the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee. No action anticipated.
So moved. Second.
Okay, thank you. That was Kim and Ann. Thank you very much. Discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? As we go into executive session, we are inviting in Carrie Amador. So we are rising to go into executive session at 7:11. There is no action, so we will relieve BCTV and we will end the meeting on our own. Yes, okay. Thank you very much.